It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is here. Mary Jo Foley is here. A little bit of nostalgia ahead. We're going to look back to the days when Microsoft was fun to cover. And then we'll talk about the desktop watermark Microsoft is putting on Windows 11 machines for some people. And bad news for Call of Duty fans. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly. Before we get into the show, a quick note. Just a few more days to take our Twit survey, the 2022 edition. We do this once a year to get to know you a little bit better. The last day is February 28th. So hasten on over to twit.tv/survey22 and thank you in advance.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 765, recorded Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022. Squig, glies. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Progress. Progress has the technology you need to secure, analyze, and integrate your application's network and processes. Find out more and download a free trial at progress.com/twit. And by IT Pro TV. Give your team an engaging IT development platform to level up their skills. Volume discounts start at 5 seats. Go to itpro.tv/windows and make sure to mention WW30 to your designated IT Pro TV account executive to get 30% off or more on a business plan. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. And they are here, my friends. The dynamic duo you've been waiting for. The dynamic duo the world needs now. Paul Thurrott. Thurrott.com.
Coming at you from the Peacock Network.
Yes. It's must-see podcast TV. Mary Jo Foley from ZDNet, all about Microsoft.com. It's a very exciting time to be a Windows user, isn't it?
No. So we're going to talk about 20 years ago. Because we're tired of everything sucking.
The sole reason I subscribed, well, not the sole, I kind of know the guy, but one of the main reasons I subscribed to Thurrott.com is because of your Programming Windows series, which is really good. A trip down memory lane.
Yeah. So just two things about that real quick. The things that I like most about I do like reliving the events. It's kind of interesting to go through this. There's things I've forgotten, blah blah blah. But honestly, I think the thing I like the most about it is the thing everyone else cares the least about, which is the programming stuff.
Yeah, I know.
And I spent a tremendous amount of time duplicating the code that Don Box and Chris Anderson wrote on stage at PDC 2003. And I don't think anyone even read it.
Typed it in from this video?
Oh, I updated it so it worked today.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yep.
That's kind of amazing.
I was on a. I'm not. This is bizarre, but when I started the first time I watched it, I was in Mexico. We were on a bus going to Puebla. You know, the things going up and down like this, and I'm trying to pay attention. I'm watching the video. And I'm looking at the code, and I got to say, sitting in the audience, almost 20 years ago, I had no idea what they were doing. I didn't understand it. And I was looking at them today, last month or whatever, and I was like, I could do that. And I was.
Which PDC was this?
2003.
What year was it? Yep.
We're going to talk about this because.
Where?
Well, it's part of this story because there were two PDCs in the Longhorn timeframe, 2003, 2005. They couldn't have been more different. Basically the same people on stage. One was euphoric, jubilant, triumphant. The other one was like it was a funeral.
It was. Yep.
It was awful.
Yep.
Couldn't.
What was the deal?
Why
was it? What was the difference? I don't understand.
No. So let's roll back a spec here. So this morning, Paul and I were talking about the show today, and Paul's like, you know what? There hasn't been a lot of news this week. And I said, you know what? We should talk about Windows, like the history of Windows. You've been writing about it every single day for like months, right? Let's go back and talk about some of the really important things that people may have forgotten. And then he started putting the notes into the OneNote document. Then I started looking up things that I saw him putting notes in. And it just reminded me of of how
much you want and need to write a book about this with me, and I accept.
No, that is not what it reminded me of. But it reminded me how fun it used to be to cover Windows, and now it's just not that fun anymore.
Why not? Yeah, why is that? Why do you think that? I don't want too corporate now. You think?
No, so this is still to come in the thing that I'm writing, but I'll just say, back in the day, Microsoft had PDCs. They were not every year, Professional Developers Conference. The point of the show was to get developers up to speed on the next big thing coming out of Microsoft from a platform perspective. And they had unofficial names. It was like the NT PDC, the .NET PDC, the Longhorn PDC, the other Longhorn PDC, because that took forever. And then eventually PDC morphed into Build, which is the conference we still have today. There were political reasons for that change, but whatever. But over time, we got to remember when these things started, and through most of the PDCs, Windows was the center of the computing universe, not just for Microsoft, but for the entire industry. So when Bill Gates stood up on stage and said, "This is what's coming next," everyone paid attention. And I got to tell you, I have a story in progress called Visionary that will be part of the series that is about the things that he predicted on stage at PDC and elsewhere, CES, Comdex. Honestly, for all of the Bill Gates problems, and there are lots of problems, that guy had a firm grasp on what was coming down the pike. Like, it's actually kind of amazing. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
But by the time Build or PDC turned into Build, Vista happened, landed with a thud. The iPhone happened, changing personal computing to focus more on mobile than on desktop. The iPad happened, kind of exacerbating that problem. Windows 8 happened, disaster, exactly the wrong release at the wrong time. And as I said to Mary Jo this morning, I said, in 2003, I don't remember the numbers, but there's several thousand developers and press members, whoever, kicked and elbowed and pushed each other the other way so they could get down to the front of this gigantic conference to watch Bill Gates and Hillel Cooperman and Jim Alchin and Don Box show us the future. And he flashed forward to 2015. 15 or 20 of us ambled up to a little dump in San Francisco to watch Terry Myerson and Joe Belfiore tell us about Windows 10. Nobody cared. Yeah. Nobody cared. Yeah. We cared.
And
but
what else was different? What else was different was the kind of access and the level of access that we got to people at that time, right? Like, I started looking at my stories about Cairo and about WinFS and Indigo and Avalon and, like Whistler when it was first announced, all these things. And I'm like, they gave me engineers to talk about things like file systems, right? Like now, if you go to Microsoft and you say, could I get somebody to talk to me like about the core of the OS, like about the storage system or file system? They would be like, what? No.
Well, first of all, you're talking to a just out of college flunky PR person. They are going to give you to a low-level PR person inside of Microsoft. Like, you never, Microsoft.
But Windows, Microsoft is more successful now than it was then. It's a bigger company. It's doing better
pie.
It's better led.
And they're trying to guide you. They're trying to guide you in talking only about the things they want more coverage of or messaging. And by the way,
that's good PR. That's a good
one. But it's also very smart financially because they're driving a narrative that is driving their stock price, and that's all they want to talk about. And it is one of those fake it till you make it type things. It really is. It is literally, we're going to pretend that all we do is cloud when a significant portion of our revenues are in fact generated by legacy on-premises products like Windows and Office and Server, because we saw something interesting happen. We started talking about cloud. Bing, bing, bing. This little, not bing, 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 because that didn't take off. But this stock price that never went anywhere for 12 years under Steve Ballmer or whatever it was, started going up. Microsoft started becoming more valuable as a company. And, they're taking advantage of a world in which there's not a lot of disclosure going on around specifics, not because any laws changed, but because companies tried it and it worked, and now we're all doing it.
But do you think that's fraudulent on their part? Like, they're not as successful, but they've pulled
No. It's the corporate norm is what it is. They're not doing anything that anyone else isn't doing, and they didn't do it first. They're not.
Though it's not just I agree with you on the fake it till you make it and hide the things that you don't want to talk about, the legacy things, and you want to talk about the future. Right. I agree. But I've also tried to get interviews where I say, okay, if you don't want to talk about Windows, let's talk about how you build Azure. All right, you want to talk about Azure? Let's talk about the things, the core, the networking, this, that. No, also no, right? Let's talk about customer case studies, Mary Jo. What's wrong with that, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's not what I want to talk about, right?
when Windows is the center of everything, there's an amazing year in 2004. I don't know what they would have spent on this, but Microsoft unleashed a barrage of consumer-oriented products and services that it has never repeated ever since. And, Windows Media Center extenders, Windows Media Connect, new versions of Windows Media Player, new versions of Windows Media Audio and Video, partnerships with every company on earth, CD and DVD burning inside. It goes on and on. It's crazy. All these plus packs and photo story, and it just went nuts. At that time, Microsoft would leverage Windows to do everything it did. At that time, it was coming out with things like what was called Windows Azure, which was just a way to put the Windows platform in the cloud at the time. At the time, .NET was a Windows-only way to do web services and also client apps. And then a lot of those things didn't do so well. And then Windows started not to do as well, started to not be as important, and the focus just kind of shifted. Today, I was, again, I was joking with Mary Jo about this yesterday. We basically, or maybe this morning, we basically take a shot now every time they mention Windows at a conference. It doesn't even come up. It used to be the conference. It was all these shows, Build, TechEd, which turned into Ignite, the partner conferences. They used to have things like Envision, and I don't remember the names of all these things, but they used to do a financial analyst meeting every year. They used to, it was Windows.
Yeah, but that's like complaining, well, I went to a Polaroid conference and they didn't want to talk about instant film anymore. Maybe the times have changed.
Oh, no, the times have changed. Of course they've changed. But you know what?
You're just nostalgic for the good old days.
A big part of their business is still Windows.
Well, but it's moving away, right? I mean, it's...
But why though? By the way, all those people at Microsoft who are pumping Azure out the door every day are staring at a screen that's running Windows that uses a keyboard and it's the same. We're literally working the same way we've always worked. But for some reason, this has shifted. I guess the other problem is for people, and this is a problem for me, and I think there are people like me, people who listen to this podcast. When Windows was the priority, they paid attention to Windows. It was a big deal for them. They put R&D money into it. They put all their best engineers on it. They were solving real computer science problems, not always well, but every year there was something new. Every year there was improvement. Every year you could tell this company gave a crap about Windows, and you just don't get that vibe from them today, do you? You just don't. Who's running the
okay, that's an interesting
interacting
point,
with customers, right? Yeah.
No, so today I was thinking to myself, okay, if I could ask them for somebody to interview, somebody who, if I wanted to say interview somebody about the core of Windows, the kernel, right? I'm like, I don't even know who to ask for. I don't even know who runs that part of Microsoft. It's so hidden from us, right? So I went on LinkedIn and I just started searching for people's names and I found out who was running core. And I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. I've never even heard of them, right? And I'm like, in the old days, if you went to Microsoft and said, I want to talk about WinFS, you got the top guy on WinFS. And you get to interview him for 45 minutes, and he would draw you architectural diagrams. Even me, who didn't really understand them, they would draw them for me and give them to me, and I'd try to figure them out. And now there's just not that. Even though things are still happening in Windows, I guess I just feel like we're not privy to the same level of people and discussions and information about about how it's changing, or maybe I'm just thinking out loud here. We're not, because there's nothing happening except tweaks to the UI.
There's nothing happening. That's the problem. So, look, this isn't all Microsoft's fault, but computing, and by computing I mean the things we interact with directly, it's shifted to mobile devices, like I said. So, this work that we're describing, these conferences that we're describing, are still happening. They're just not happening for Microsoft. Google and Apple do this stuff all the time. And Google has various developer efforts around, Kotlin and Flutter and other things that they're working on. And if you were covering those companies, I suspect we could go to them and say, hey, we'd like to talk to the guy doing Jetpack or whatever. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, here you go. And they are advancing UI. Yeah. They are advancing the platform. They are advancing that thing that people interact with every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. But so but we're in the Microsoft world, right? When was the last time Microsoft approached you about interviewing somebody about .NET? I can't even remember the last time. Maybe like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I do. So it was around, it wasn't that long ago, but it was years ago. So there was a Visual Studio anniversary. I interviewed several people on the Visual Studio team. The thing that's kind of odd about that, though, is when you, and I read about developer topics probably more than most mainstream, Windows bloggers, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But, the .NET 20th anniversary just happened, right? And we complained that this should have been a bigger deal. It seemed like it was kind of amateurish, the little online event they did. And no one ever reached out. I mean, I got one PR person said, hey, by the way, this is what we're going to announce next Monday. And it was just, and it was not particularly interesting. It seems like there could have been, this was an incredible opportunity to bring back people from the past. And I think that I hope I did, but if I didn't mention this last week, .NET Rocks, the Richard Campbell and Carl Franklin podcast now has done 3 episodes with important people from .NET, including Miguel de Casa and Anders Heilsberg, and did episodes just one each with those guys, and then they did a third one as well, which was more respectful and more on point for what should be happening for this this anniversary.
Right. Yeah. No, just to bring parallel situations, like I just said, did anybody approach you about developer tools? Like when Microsoft was working on Windows 10X, right? And then they killed that. I kind of think about how that compared to what they did with Longhorn, right? So Longhorn was like they had an event that people refer to as the Longhorn Reset, right? Which is when Microsoft had to publicly acknowledge, we can't pull off what we were going to do, but here's what we're going to try to do instead. But they never did that with 10X. Like, I remember I broke the story about 10X being tabled, and a few weeks later they're like, okay, we did scrap it. But there's it's not the same kind of level of discourse with the people who cover the product.
It's not the same level of responsibility. It's not the same level of caring. It's just, now granted, this was a big, Longhorn was a very public failure and it had gone on for years and years.
It was.
Apple made a lot of fun of them for this, as every year they were like, here's what we shipped, and Microsoft hasn't shipped anything. That wasn't fair. Microsoft shipped 2 versions of Windows Media Center. They shipped 2 versions of Windows Tablet. They shipped the first x64 version of Windows. They shipped Windows XP Service Pack 2, which was a major release. I mean, honestly, Microsoft shipped just as much in that time frame as Apple did, but the problem was Microsoft was also promoting Longhorn the whole time, and it collapsed. But you're right. I mean, during that, so within a month of Jim Alchin walking into Bill Gates' office and saying this isn't going to work, they had informed employees about what had happened, and they went public and they sent that guy on a tour to self-flagellate in front of everybody from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's what a credible development organization does. It
just was
lost his job.
Yeah. No,
Jim
I
Alston.
just feel like
he left after that.
He did. Yeah. So I was saying, Paul, when Paul was putting these notes into the OneNote for us today, one of the things he put in was the Longhorn Reset. And it made me go back and find this story that I wrote with a friend of mine at the time, Daryl Taft. We broke the story basically about the Longhorn Reset. Microsoft had planned to give it to another publication. And I remember this is how fun this was, right? Like, we had it. I put it in our publishing system. And then I'm like, I got to call Microsoft though to get a comment. So when I called them, they panicked because they had the story lined up with somebody else to tell a much nicer, kinder, gentler version of that story. And so I remember the PR person said to me, give me 15 minutes. And that automatically raised a flag. And I'm like, why? Right. So I got everything in the publishing system. And when the person didn't call me back in 15 minutes, I hit publish. And then 1 minute later, the authentic, their sanctioned, cleaned up story published in another place, right?
Oh, that's
and so
great.
I'm like, okay, we beat him. But that kind of excitement and fun and intrigue and all that, it just doesn't feel like it's there anymore, right?
No, because nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
I Yeah, the excitement then was real. I think the attempts to drum up excitement in recent years have been manufactured, and I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. It's been, like I said, it's been very interesting revisiting the history. It's depressing in some ways,
Right.
For sure.
Right. Now, I've forgotten even like the code name. Like, me, I love code names, but I'm like, wait, what was Odyssey? What was Neptune? What was this and that? Because I remember.
Oh, here's one. Do you remember this one? I just came across this last night. Oasis. Oasis was the code name for what would have been Windows XP Second Edition, and that was the product they decided not to do, and to just give people Windows XP Service Pack 2. Because they wanted to
Did you see my story on why?
On why XP2, the Alchin thing. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I got to talk to Jim Alchin when he was leaving Microsoft, and I said, why did you turn XP into Service Pack 2 instead of creating another version of Windows, which is basically what SP2 was. It was a real version of Windows by itself. Yeah. Yep. And he said Ballmer didn't want to do that. He said Ballmer wanted me to call it a new version of Windows, but I thought people wouldn't actually apply it unless it was a service pack, like they just ignore it. And I needed them to put it on their machines. So I said, let me call it Service Pack 2. I mean, all those kind of stories like that, they told us what was going on behind the scenes. That's what I think we're missing now, right? Like it feels like we're not being given the truth, or like
we are absolutely not being given the truth.
And a level of looking into and understanding, like, I feel like they're not going to lose anything by giving us that look inside. Like, why did you scrap Windows 10X? Like, what made you decide at the last minute not to do it? Right? And
this is probably true of everything, right? This is not just this industry or Microsoft, but I because I'm so fully immersed in it. Every Windows division, every version of Windows, every leader of Windows has sort of been a reaction to the thing that came before it. One of the big things about Jim Alchin is that he was explicitly transparent about what they were doing. And of course, that kind of led to some of the problems because they made all these big promises and then couldn't deliver them. So the next thing they brought in was this guy from the Stasi, Steven Sinofsky, who went in the complete opposite direction. And he could present it in a very customer-focused way and say, we're not going to tell you anything until we're sure we can deliver it to you, which sounds great. But it was actually very secretive, and there was a lot of infighting over that kind of stuff. And then, of course, he's gone, and Terry Morrison goes right back to the Jim Alchin. His idea was the Windows Insider program because we want to be transparent about what we're doing next. And then he's out, and we didn't have anything for a little while, and now we have Panos Panayio's a return to the secretive stuff. Like, we'll just announce stuff when we're ready. Although they can't even do that right because they announced like 15 new features for Windows 11. 3 months later, they deliver 5 of them. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds. It's like fake transparency, and then you don't even deliver on the stupid thing you promised.
So how does this affect end users, though? I mean, is this an issue for those of us who just use Windows?
I feel like there's two groups of people we're talking about, like the normal people and then the enthusiasts, right? The enthusiasts probably feel like we do, like it's just not that exciting, right? And it's just not like they're like, that's why I don't know if you guys saw this happen this week. Swift on Security on Twitter made a joke about Windows 12, and so many sites jumped on it and wrote stories because
Swift on Security confirmed a report that there was a Windows 12 according to that company or that little blog.
But it was a joke, right? And then
nonsense.
But this tells you how much people are like frothing for something exciting with Windows.
So,
right? They're
but to answer, but here's look. The world has moved on. We can't do anything about that.
It has.
The thing that was happening back then that is missing today is Microsoft, because Windows was the center of everything and was so invested in it and was spending so much money, doing research and development around it, would come up with this stuff to move the industry forward. And, whether it was .NET or those programming APIs that they were doing for Longhorn, Avalon, WinFS and Indigo, they would show developers how to use this stuff. They would show people how these things were going to be better. And then some version of Windows was going to come out that was going to be awesome because it had all this stuff. And when something like that face plants, even though, by the way, that technical stuff that they did, those WinFX APIs that became .NET 3, it's doubly problematic because they really were trying to move the world forward, you know. And I know, look, they were a business. They weren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah.
But, you know, remember there was something called Hailstorm. Hailstorm is something that could have solved the problem we still have today, which is like you have accounts everywhere. You have no, like there's no way for you, like there's no one way for you as an individual to hide your identity, make a payment, and not have that company have access to your actual credit card information. This was part of something they were going to do for, you know, again, for them, they wanted the money, but they came up with a system. And because Microsoft was Microsoft, and that year was 2002 or 3 or whatever year it was, they were in the middle of all that antitrust stuff. Even the companies that were on stage with them on day one, like American Express, and I don't remember the other couple, eventually all kind of turned around and said, yeah, we don't want to do this with Microsoft. We want, you know, we'll just interact with our customers ourselves, you know? So there's little pieces of that stuff out everywhere, but they're all over the place, you know, and there's no one place you can go that has everything. And Microsoft was like, yeah, let's make this whole thing a platform, you know? And look, they would have done some bad stuff. Microsoft was terrible back then, but but they had that vision for like, okay, we see the internet's happening. We get it. It needs this. And they were right. It did need that. But no one was going to listen because it was them.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. but to Leo's point, like, does this matter to like people, right?
Today?
Like just what we're talking about, right? I think enthusiasts, yes, because they want excitement. They want something new. They're the people who are like, what is Microsoft doing with foldables? Because Microsoft won't say, right? They won't say it. What are we doing with Windows on foldables? What are we doing with Windows on dual screen? Nobody will talk, right? But normal people, like people who just want to use an operating system and are good with it, like not a lot. Doesn't mean a lot to them, right?
Well, but the excitement that Microsoft used to generate, such as it was, right, has moved on, right? So Apple still has events that generate an incredible amount of press, and most of that stuff is around phones.
Used to, though. I think some of this is the maturity of the industry, right? I mean,
that's right, absolutely.
Apple's not as exciting as it used to be, except for
it's
how
still
rich it is.
It's a news cycle, though. The Apple announcements, when they announce an iPhone, that will be on the front page of the New York Times.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, that's rather incredible, right? This is, you know, whether we as enthusiasts understand that this is, you know, is not advancing as fast as it used to. Of course, it's like you said, it's mature.
Yeah.
But they still get that news cycle, you know. Microsoft could announce, I mean, what does Microsoft have to do to get that kind of news? They have to spend
Windows 12
like $1 gillion on
Swift on security was right.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man.
You know, for us, it's like a big, hey, Microsoft just shipped 3 new features for Windows 11. Oh, my God, something happened. Please dust off the rot so we can write a story about it.
Don't you think Microsoft wants to be the calm, reassuring, we don't change much company? That's what business wants. Business doesn't want the flash.
Except, again, Microsoft is 2 companies, right? Microsoft is a consumer company and an enterprise company. And you're right. The enterprise company, they don't want that. They don't want that at all. But the consumer side of Microsoft, they do want that. And they can't figure out how to get it anymore.
That's true.
They just can't.
Yeah,
right?
even with Xbox. And
Microsoft lost developers when Windows was still the biggest thing in the world. That wasn't their fault. It's just the way the world went.
Right.
They've completely destroyed that story since. That's terrible. And, you know, Microsoft, like you said, it's a much bigger company than it was before. But it doesn't dominate the industry. It doesn't dominate any part of the industry that matters, really. I mean, I guess it's number one in, personal computers, yay. You know, but don't you feel like they'll always be kind of number 2 in cloud computing, really? Like, I mean, Azure has like 1,100 different services, and God, you could pay me to try to keep a track of half of that. But geez, like, what is that? Like, okay, so it's like you're describing different forms of electricity. You're talking about a, GE or something. Like, okay, I mean, yeah, it's a big company, but like, crazy.
Well, that's it, though. That's exactly it. It's infrastructure.
Yeah. I just feel like, from the beginning of the personal computing era, there was always something really interesting for enthusiasts, right? Whether it was Commodore versus Atari back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, or the 16-bit stuff with the Mac and the Atari ST and the Amiga. And then, the PC went 32-bit and Windows became the biggest thing in the world, and Mac versus Windows. And then we went to mobile and it was like Android versus iPhone. And, there's always this, there was always something interesting there. And there's all these great stories, and you can go back. And for Microsoft, the apex was literally this 2003. It was literally Longhorn PDC. Yeah. And it's all been downhill. We didn't realize it for a few years, but it's all been downhill ever since.
Do you think they'd like it to be different? That's not what they want?
Yeah. If you
I do.
Mary Jo interviewed Bill Gates about his regrets, and he's done that interview elsewhere.
Ballmer.
Ballmer.
Yeah, I got to
Bill
I had
Gates
the
has been
last
interviewed.
interview with him. Yeah, and I said to him, "What was your biggest regret of the time you were CEO?" And he said, "Longhorn."
Right.
I was
That's
like,
weird.
wow.
If you but then you go to Bill Gates and you say, "What's your biggest regret at Microsoft?" He said Windows Phone, and it's like, okay, So yeah, I mean, do the people that brought Microsoft up into the world wish that things had gone differently? Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
They wish they should be. Bing should be what Google is. Windows Phone should be what the iPhone is. Like, if they could have correctly leveraged that Windows monopoly they had, and weren't distracted by antitrust, which they were, maybe the world would be a different place. I'm not claiming it would have been a better place for sure, but I mean, for people who follow Microsoft like we do professionally, certainly would have been a more interesting place. Although, I don't know. I'm just it's if you look at Microsoft as a giant thing, like how much of it do I care about? I used to care about almost all of it. I probably literally at one point did.
They're a $2 trillion company. They're not a failure.
They're not one thing, right? And they're also not one thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about Microsoft like it's a company in a way.
No, that's
right?
For sure. I mean,
we
part
have the
of their
same
success
complaints
was
about Google on the Google show. It's not that interesting anymore, and it's kind of fragmented, and they've lost the way, and they don't have good messaging, and maybe that's just what happens when.
And they also have the same kind of robotic CEO who talks and like, what is he talking about? My God, like
yeah, but Nadella's a good CEO. I don't know if Sundar Pichai is a good CEO, but Nadella, at least in terms of performance, right? Or not?
You know what? I don't know. Steve Ballmer made the case.
He was
about
a terrible
his success,
CEO, right?
Except for when he became CEO, they were whatever size they were,
Right.
and when he left, they were like 12 times as big.
Yeah.
And the stock price didn't move under him. That's famous. But honestly, he's the reason they're doing what they're doing today.
Yeah,
he's the one who started them down Azure and .NET and the whole, not .NET, but the whole cloud path. That's him.
I think Nadella has been a really good CEO in the way that old IBMers were good CEOs. They cared a lot about the culture. They cared a lot about the culture of the company.
Elephants Can Dance. Who was that guy?
Well, you're damning them with faint praise because, I mean, that's what they're afraid of is becoming an IBM.
I know they are, but if you look at what
IBM
is he really good at, it was very successful. And when you interviewed the CEOs of IBM back in the day, before Ginny Rometty, they would always just talk about like very corporate themes, and I feel like Nadella is a good steward for the corporate culture stuff, and I think he hasn't done what Ballmer did, for better or for worse, stock price wise, for better, in that he doesn't go out there and talk tech all the time. Like, he doesn't just, like, if people ask him a tech question, he has a very measured and prepared answer. Steve Ballmer you'd be like, what do you think about healthcare? Yeah, we're going to take healthcare over. We're going to buy like 10 companies,
salesman.
right?
Yeah, he was just a salesman, really. And I don't think Satya's a salesman. Satya's a technologist.
He had a deep understanding of what Microsoft was doing at every level. I mean,
No, and Satya can talk tech. He is very technical. A couple times I've gotten him to talk tech, and I'm like, yeah, this guy can go really, really deep, right?
Yeah, he's a
came up out of
technologist.
Bing and then Windows Server.
Yeah.
Ballmer could have been the CEO of any company. If it were General Tire, you want to see what we're going to do with our winterized rubber. It's amazing.
Totally. Yep.
Vulcanizers. So,
it was more fun for us because.
Well, yeah, but that's okay. So I hate to say it, but that's kind of my question here: is are you just complaining it's not as much fun for you?
And I think for enthusiasts.
Why would I be complaining it's not as much fun for someone else?
But that's what I'm asking. For end users, is Microsoft a better company than it was? I have to say yes. Yeah.
In terms of what are you answering for better?
Stability.
Yeah.
Focus.
Look, Microsoft was a very driven company that pushed the industry forward for many years. They made a lot. They did a lot of terrible things. I mean, we can't erase that. I'm not stepping around that. But that's But so did Michael Jordan. By the way, he was horrible, but he also
great baller.
No, but I mean, like
yeah.
No, I mean, I'm just saying.
The modern Microsoft is exactly what it wants to be, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think they're looking and saying, "Oh, I wish we could be more like Paul and Mary Jo want us to be."
But if you ask Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer or Paul Allen, if he was still around, given the way the world has gone, are you happy with Microsoft where they are? I don't think if they were being honest, they would say, no, we should be dominant in web search. We should be dominant in mobile devices. We should be dominant in advertising.
They're not dominant in any of the fields that they're in, even Azure. They're not dominant in.
Right.
No.
Not Xbox, not anything.
They're a bigger company, but the pie is bigger. Like I said, it's a bigger pie. So they have a smaller slice of a much bigger pie. And that is not what
we're
those
number
guys would have
two.
wanted.
We're number two.
Yeah, it doesn't resonate as much.
No.
And if Steve Ballmer, if he was going to jump around on stage today and say developer, 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 there wouldn't be anyone in the audience.
Yeah.
They've already lost that audience.
I feel like in the old days, everybody like who cared about tech looked at Microsoft to see kind of where things were going. Like, where are they going? Because that's where they're going, right? And people don't think that way now.
Who's that way today? Who's that way today?
Nobody. Because now it's because
not
the
Intel,
Apple thing. Apple
not Google,
did for a while.
Not Apple.
Apple when they were pushing Mac OS 10, every year came out and said, "Look, this is what's happening this year," and it was very exciting. And they were, granted they were coming from a place where they needed to advance very quickly, but they did some things that were actually pretty incredible.
But that's long gone, that era.
I don't know, but Apple's big successes have come from being secretive.
Yeah.
And they don't want you. They're not going to talk about the future. They don't want you to do it.
Right.
They have ideas about the future. They're
like
hiding that
too,
stuff.
Right?
Well, so they're the Panos Panay and this, they're the. It's funny that Microsoft oscillates between those 2 points.
They do. They totally do.
I think they look over their shoulders at Apple and go, that works so well for them.
This is people aren't going to believe me when I say this, but it's probably just because they don't remember this. The other thing that is missing from Microsoft today and missing from the tech industry in general is Bill Gates was, and this is going to sound crazy, was legitimately humble about the things that they did badly. He had every speech you can find an instance of him standing up and saying, "You know what? We really screwed this up." Or he would make some kind of, one year it was the PDC 2005. PDC 2003, there were fires around LA and everyone had trouble getting in. PC 2005, there were brownouts. So the power went out in the conference center right before the thing started. And he made a joke and he said, I used to say that software needed to be more like like electricity. It was like something you could trust that would always work. And he goes, they got the message wrong. I didn't want you to become like us. I said we need to become like you. And that's beautiful,
Yeah.
But you compare that to
Steve
the kind
Jobs
of
is that way too. Steve Jobs was
he was so fake.
I think a founder, maybe that's more the founder mindset where they want to they want to win. And the caretaker mindset, which is Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai, is we just want to keep making $1 billion a month.
Exactly.
Right. There you go. Well, there you go. That's it. So that's like what's the difference between a leader and a caregiver? I mean, they're both great people in some ways.
He's a caretaker. He's keeping the lights on, and the machine is running. That's what's going to happen with Amazon. I think Bezos had a fire in his belly that Andy Jassy lacks.
Yep.
That's what happens.
People in the past year have had really bad experiences with Amazon for the first time with regards to shipping and stuff, right? There was this miracle where we could get things like that day even, the next day. And we all expect and want this. We pay no attention to the fact that the trucks are ruining our highways and they're not paying anything to fix them. But okay. But last year, because of the pandemic, the last couple of years, whatever, that has started to fall apart. And for the first time, we just experienced this thing. I spend an ungodly amount of money on Amazon. We get packages delivered not every day, but every week for sure, many times a week. And I misordered some stuff, and then I needed to order coffee basically, and because we had run out, and there was an option to get it like that day, and I was like, wow, actually that's really good because we need it for tomorrow morning. So I paid extra for it. It didn't come that day. It didn't come the next day. It came 2 days later. So we had to go get coffee, right? Big deal. Paul didn't have coffee. This is a big deal, except for one thing. I went to that thing. I went back to Amazon. I said, well, I guess I'll just return this. I mean, I paid extra for this. I mean, screw them. I mean, and they're like, oh, you can't return it. Like, really? Really? I give you several $1,000s a year, and you're telling me that this $40 that I spent on coffee, which has not been, even the box has not been opened, you're not going to let me return that? That makes me think about not using Amazon, right? That's how that crack starts, you know? And I think a lot of people have had an experience like that over the past year where the Amazon shipping has become like the post office.
Can I tell you something?
You know?
No? That's because of their success. Lisa had a problem with Amazon, and I can't remember, it was over a credit card or something, and she said, that's it, I'm not going to deal with them. Screw them, I'm going to shop local.
And then one day went by.
6 months, 6 months later, she's back on Amazon.
Of course.
Because they own the world. And part of the reason that they can't deliver overnight anymore is because they're delivering so much.
Well, they can't get by their own trucks. You know, it's like, if only they could fly around.
It's a traffic jam, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's one thing to be idealistic.
We're in a different world. I guess what I'm saying is the world has changed dramatically, and it's not. I agree with you. I'm nostalgic for the good old days when everything was exciting and new and fresh, and there was constant change.
Actually, you know, that's an interesting point. So for people like us who've been around a long time, you know, we can remember the beginning of the PC industry. I was a tech enthusiast in the 80s, so I was a Commodore 64 guy. I was an Amiga guy. I routinely hear from Amiga people even today who are like, hey, did you hear this thing that's called Amiga now is releasing some new nonsense?
Yeah.
And I'm nostalgic for that time period because I was young and the world was full of hope and wonder, you know, whatever it is. But looking back on this stuff now, this is like 2003 to 2005, 6, whatever. It's weird because all of a sudden that's kind of a long time ago now as well. And I find myself being nostalgic for this simpler world of the early 2000s when Apple could come out with something called Time Machine and it was changed, you know, it was amazing. Or Microsoft could announce, who knows what they announced, nonsense, with portable media centers or, you know, Windows Media Audio that could fit like 3 times as much music in the same space as an MP3 file or whatever. And like, it was like, everything was so awesome, you know, and it wasn't that long ago really in the scope of things, but it's already hitting on that nostalgia scale.
Yeah.
You know,
it's weird. Nostalgia happens fast. Take it from me as an old man. It hits you. It's
right there with you.
Nostalgia is only something's 10, 15, 20 years old. That's it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I was trying to think of the last time we got some kind of a heads up or presentation from Microsoft that just wowed us. And I guess the thing that came to my mind was the original HoloLens announcement back in 2015, right? And
even that stalled.
Right. But we got to go in the secret room. We had to leave all our stuff in lockers, right?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, man, we're seeing something big here. Like, there's been nothing like that since.
No. That was the last one, maybe.
We had done you and I, Mary Jo, had done a Windows Weekly from campus at one of these events.
Yeah.
It might have been the same
exciting.
day. But we were ushered over from wherever that was to wherever we were going by security guards in the rain, and it was dark, and it was like we were with the Secret Service, and it was like this was like this big deal, you know. And as far as I know, the Microsoft campus today is probably like a post-apocalyptic zombie land of, you know, coyotes, and there's no people there, so I have no idea what's going on. I haven't been there in a long time. You know, it's just the way the world has gone.
It is possible that once the pandemic ends, if it ever ends, things will get exciting again, right? Maybe that's all it is.
Maybe.
I hope so.
Yeah, Kev Brewer says, what about when they announced the Neo, the Duo and the Neo, that when we were in that cramped little tiny conference space, remember?
You will remember, I said, there is no valid reason to claim that dual screens do anything for anybody.
I agree.
And what they said on stage that day was nonsense. And the thing that this guy would never know, because he wasn't there, was that event, when that happened, they populated the audience with a bunch of MVPs or enthusiasts because Panos Panay likes to have applause, and he didn't like staring. He didn't like the blank face of the press staring at him.
He wanted some engagement. Panos?
Yeah, he made us sit in the back. Yeah, because we were all like, well, because remember the event where like he showed off like a Surface to somebody, maybe the girl from the Wall Street Journal or somebody. And he said, he goes, what are we going to get to you to do to move away from your MacBook or whatever? And she was just like, I like use a Mac. What?
Sorry.
Like it just. So, yeah, I mean, was that exciting? I mean, it was interesting because it was kind of weird and different. But honestly, like as far as like being exciting, it was like, they didn't make a good case for this at all. And by the way, ever since then, they've never made a good case for it, but whatever. Sure. And, you and I were on this thing that was like half the size of a Paris cafe table with our two laptops, Paris, kind of falling off the edge.
The table was so tippy, we were trying to type on it.
Was that exciting? I don't know.
We were shoved in a corner. Like we couldn't even see. He was holding up products and we couldn't see them because like Paul said, the whole audience was MVPs and the press was like on the fringe edge of it, right? And so he would like hold it up like, what do you think of this? And we couldn't see it. It was like, I don't know.
People forget this, right? Or people just aren't old enough to remember this. But back in the 70s, certainly, and probably the 60s and whoever, I don't remember, but TV comedies used to have canned laughter. Yeah. So you'd be watching like MASH or something, and you'd hear an audience laugh, and it's like there's no audience watching them film this. What is this?
Right.
And that's what those events were like. It was like canned applause from like a crowd that was specifically brought in to make it seem like this was exciting.
Yeah.
I used to complain about Apple events because the press, who I felt should have been maybe a little more, I don't know, fair, was just basically standing up and applauding every time they announced anything. And that's clearly what Microsoft wanted. They wanted us to do that at their events. And I'm sorry, you can't generate excitement. I mean, it's either
I think Apple also put employees in the front. That's okay. Maybe they pioneered that actually.
Yes, another Apple.
Another Apple first, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. There's a Steve Jobs patent actually for that. So.
I know it sounds to people like we're like, it's just we're reminiscing and being downers, but we're trying to make more of a point here. We actually are. Yeah. We're trying to make a point about like how the way things have changed. Part of it is inevitable, maybe has to do with pandemic, has to do with this or that. But part of it has to do, I feel, also just like with access and the ability for us to get other people excited. Like that's part of our job.
Let us do our job and get people enthusiastic. Yeah.
Right? I feel like if they gave me access to the Core OS and head of Core OS, that interview would get people revved up. And not because I wrote it, just because the guy would be saying things that we hadn't heard, right?
I don't remember the URLs anymore, but in 2003, just to keep using that as an example, if you wanted to find out what Microsoft had announced at any time in their history, you would go to the Press Pass site, and there it was. All of it was there. Yep. If you want to find out what Microsoft just announced today, God help you. There is no place for that. There are blogs everywhere. Some Microsoft blogs are on Medium. They still have a press site, but they have Microsoft has corporate blogs like Microsoft on the issues. They have executives and employees of all kinds of blogs.
Right? Sometimes it's not.
It could be
LinkedIn.
Anywhere. And it's just. Yeah. On the one hand, it's this kind of nice democratization of communications, I guess. Microsoft, unlike Apple, even today, allows their employees to blog and talk about what they're doing or whatever, unless it's too, really secretive. And but that means you also don't know where stuff's going to be. And some days you'll see something on my RSS feed, like Microsoft did the thing, and I'm like, oh, cool. And I'm like, I'll go to blog.microsoft.com. No, it's not there. Okay, Microsoft.com. No, it's not there. Okay, so tech community, is it in the tech? Like where it could be anywhere. Right. It's I don't know.
Yeah, even something that small, like there's no center of gravitas, right? Like you're just kind of looking for stuff randomly, and it makes it harder for us to kind of get people educated and enthused, because half the time we're spending the time just trying to find stuff, right? As crazy as that sounds, it's like, okay, I don't know where this is.
No, the other thing I see in my notes all the time, and Mary Jo has mentioned this a couple of times, is something happens, and you contact Microsoft and you say, hey, what's going on with this? I saw a story somewhere and they said this, and then I would get a statement back. I don't actually bother to do that very often anymore, because the people I deal with at Microsoft are so far down the chain in the PR world. They don't even know what I'm talking about, for one thing. Yeah. So there's a whole period of time that goes on where they try to find something out, and half the times they just forget. That used to be kind of the running gag. There was, in fact, I won't be able to tell you the event because I just don't remember. But sometime several years ago, I had met this new guy. It was back when we used to travel. Obviously, we were at an event, and I had a question, and the guy said, the PR guy said, I'll look that up and I'll come back and I'll get you that answer. And I'm like, great. And so the next morning came. We were at some reception. The guy came over. He said, hey, Paul, I just wanted to let you know, I sent you an email about that question you asked. And I said, what the hell is wrong with you? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, nobody ever answers questions. A PR has not come back with an answer for me in 20 years. What are you doing? I'm like, you're not going to make it here, dude. That's not how it is. That's not how things work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hope. Yeah, exactly. I just hope now that the pandemic is lifting a little, maybe not over, but maybe we're going to start doing a little more traveling again. Maybe we'll get to see some things in person and start a fresh.
It makes a big difference. That does make a big difference.
It does. Yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't mean this to sound like old man, shaking his fist at the cloud.
I know. Same. I don't either. Yeah.
But I as an actual, a literal enthusiast for Windows.
You want to be enthusiastic. I understand that.
You do.
I hate to see what's happened to it. And it going through this history has been a stark reminder of how different things were, when Windows really mattered.
Let's we didn't really get to the history. So let's do that. I'm going to take a little break. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then just some of the highlights from Paul's Programming Windows series, because there's some really great stuff in here that I want to talk about. But first, I want to talk about Progress. Progress. I love that name. Progress. Yeah, it's actually with a capital P. It's a proper noun. It's the company. Their products, like the Move It, Managed File Transfer, them. Progress has been enabling enterprise experiences for decades, and they have assembled the technologies that are going to help empower businesses to thrive in a post-COVID world. As we get there, you're going to want to know about Progress. Most companies don't have the resources. It's the old build and buy decision, But they don't have the resources to invest in technology. Facebook needs a program. They write it. But you're still a company. You're still a business. You need to differentiate. But you have a smaller budget. You gotta make Progress with a limited investment. That's why you should turn to Progress as a trusted provider. With Progress, any organization can achieve the level of differentiation that's absolutely critical in today's business environment. Whether you're an IT professional concerned about networking and infrastructure, security and compliance, or enabling web and digital experiences, Progress has a solution for you. I certainly Move It is a very well-known. Their managed file transfer. I'm sure you know about that. It provides control, security, and visibility over all file transfer activities. It's a much better way to transfer confidential data. You don't want to send it through insecure channels. That opens you up to all sorts of exposure. With a managed file transfer solution, you gain insight into who has access to the files, if the file was accessed, when. You could shut down access when you need it. Move It's great. There's also What's Up Gold Network Monitoring, which allows you to monitor networks, applications, and devices both in the cloud and on-prem. Kemp LoadMaster Load Balancer. It's next generation load balancing and application delivery for private, public, and hybrid clouds. And it's the best. Flowmon, you know them, right? Network intelligence, a network performance monitoring, and a network detection and response solution. Everybody uses Flowmon. Sitefinity. How about that? Their digital experience platform. Build digital experiences across channels that improve business agility, foster personal relationships with visitors. Progress has put together an amazing portfolio of tools. All the technology you need to secure, analyze, and integrate your applications, your network, your processes. Find out more and download a free trial. Just go to progress.com/twit. See all the stuff that's there. Progress.com/twit. PROGRESS.com/twit. Don't miss out. In fact, go right now. You'll get your own Progress swag bag. Progress.com/twit. Please go to the /twit part so we know, they know that you saw it here on Windows Weekly. Progress.com/twit. We thank them for their support of Windows Weekly. Paul, Mary Jo, if you're a premium member of Thurrott.com, you've probably been reading this Programming Windows series. I look forward to it. You did a bunch, and then you paused a little bit. Now you're back at it. Let's talk about some of the things you're writing about.
Yeah, this has been kind of interesting because I was a little nervous getting back into this, and then it's kind of poured out of me. Like I'm just trying to look this up.
It's like I know exactly how you feel. It's like, wow, this was fun. These were fun times.
Yeah, I've written 38 articles since the beginning of the year so far. So, and I think they first half is 50 something or whatever. But it's big. And some of these are really long. Some of these are 4,000 words, whatever. But yeah, so the era I'm writing about right now is what I think of as the .NET era, meaning it's from like 2000, 2001 on. The first half that I had written a year or two ago was, Windows 1.0 through that period, right? The first, we call it 15 years, But it's, .NET happens, Windows XP, or Windows 2000 happens, Windows XP happens. And then we get into this kind of interesting period where Microsoft was going to release something called Blackcomb after Windows XP. And it was going to be a major release. But Bill Gates said it was too aggressive. And so they did a little thing called Longhorn. And Longhorn was just going to be this little interim release.
Oh, yeah, just a little thing.
Little thing. And the funny thing is, funny, but if you think about like Windows 98, 98 SE, Me, 2000, XP, they released at least one major operating system release every year for 5 years. And then it just kind of came to a grinding halt, And Longhorn, I think I said this to Mary Jo privately. Yeah, I think it was private. I'm working on this theory. I have not found anyone that actually said this, but Bill Gates stepped down as CEO right in this time frame. It was right around the time that the antitrust stuff from the United States was wearing on him, and he just couldn't take it anymore. Steve Ballmer became CEO. Bill Gates became the chief software architect. He really originally was focusing very much on .NET, and then he kind of moved forward to these developer initiatives for Longhorn. Longhorn went from being a little interim nothing to being Blackcomb, really, right? But even bigger than Blackcomb, this major initiative. Lots and lots of stuff. And it's like I was a young guy when this was going on. I lived this as an enthusiast. Like there were the highs and the lows and the leak builds, and people would write each other emails or have chats and be like, "Hey, here's how you enable glass in this build," or "Here's how you do this" and stuff. It was, it was exciting. And but the thing, I think one of the key things we need to remember here is the guy that ran Windows at this time was Jim Allchin. He's a good man. He's a good guy. But Jim Allchin was the guy, when he wasn't running all of Windows, tried to do Cairo. And Cairo had failed spectacularly. Cairo was going to have an object-oriented file system. It was this really far-reaching thing that was just too much. It was based on NT. It didn't go anywhere. Yep. And, of course, then he comes on. Now he's running Windows. He won the battle. He beat Brad Silverberg for the future Windows. He took over Windows. Now he's doing Cairo again, right? I mean, that's kind of what it turned into. Longhorn turned into, because Longhorn never really released. Like a lot of people will say, well, Longhorn became Windows Vista. Yeah, not really. Sort of. Yeah. But Longhorn, crashed into the ground in August 2004.
2004.
And they started over again. They started over from scratch.
When did Bill Gates step down?
That's what I'm trying to remember off the top.
As the CEO.
2001-ish.
I have
right around.
Let me. I think I have a video from that.
It is a day the industry never thought would come. Join us all day as we report on Bill Gates' last full day at Microsoft.
Oh,
He's been in the planet
for
the past 2 years.
This is a different one.
He'll still be active as chairman. It's hard to believe it's here. Yeah, I think Bill's ready for his last day. He's worked pretty hard, saved a little bit. He is completely focused.
I mean, Bill's been
This was later. This was when he. This is when he stepped down completely.
But honestly, has he really stepped down? I mean,
right, I know.
He's still an advisor to Satya Nadella.
He is. Right.
2000.
2000 is when he was no longer CEO. Yep.
Okay, so this was. This was later than that.
Yeah, because he was chief software architect for a long time.
Oh, this is him like just leaving forever.
He was chairman, until very recently, actually.
Yeah, he just recently stepped down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I was looking for Longhorn. I mean, it's funny because we wrote a bunch of articles about Longhorn pre-2003. 2003 is when all the leaks were indicating the whole project was just falling
Actually,
apart.
Mary Jo,
right?
I believe you and Daryl, if I'm not mistaken, wrote an article about something called Avalon before anyone had ever heard that term. And, no one really understood what it meant, but...
Neither did we, but we were trying to figure it out.
Yeah, of course.
No, we kept hearing all these crazy code names, and then the famous, as we called it, the Longhorn PDC in 2003. That was the Don Box, Chris Anderson lap around Longhorn, right?
Right.
Where you recreated the code, and where Jim Alchin was the coding monkey on the stage.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Actually, I kind of wanted to talk about. He kind of did his little monkey thing over to the table.
Yeah.
That was a fun thing for developers. For one thing, they wrote code in plain text editors. They used Emacs, Vi, or I think Alchin used. Actually, I think he used Notepad, or no, he used Notepad++. And
forget
but
it.
He actually wrote. He wrote code on stage live. The group vice president of Microsoft wrote code. They didn't pull in any canned code from anywhere. They didn't pull in snippets. They didn't use Visual Studio. They showed how you could create these incredible graphical effects using Avalon, and they did some Indigo stuff as well, and some also some storage stuff, and it was amazing. Now, the warning sign was they had just shown us Longhorn for the first time. There was a rock video. Yeah. They brought out Hillel Cooperman. It was very exciting. Glass everywhere, see-through transparencies, everything hardware accelerated, vector graphics. It was the future. It was the future. It was 5 years in the future. And then they gave us this build, which was this Windows XP bland-looking piece of junk that had nothing to do with anything we had saw on stage. And, the idea was, we're not ready with the graphical stuff yet, but the APIs are there. It's for you to develop on, blah, 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 whatever. The big changes that occurred over the next couple of years, other than the whole reset thing, right, is developers went to Microsoft and said, well, this is all very exciting, but there's several 100 million people on Windows XP. Could you bring this stuff to Windows XP? And as part of the reset, they announced, this is the making lemonade part of that announcement. They were going to backport what they still called WinFX, well, two parts of it, Avalon and Indigo, to Windows XP and Windows Server 2003. The other big change was that 2005 came around and they did another PDC. Jim Alchin got up on stage. Don Box was there. Chris Anderson. They did live coding on stage. It was like a funeral. Jim Alchin couldn't keep track of what he was saying. They kept advancing the slides at the wrong time. He had kept stuttering over his words. Now, this is a guy who had just admitted to Bill Gates he couldn't make Longhorn. They had released a build earlier that year that was junk. It was absolute terribleness after 9 months of silence because, again, they had restarted from scratch and never told anybody. And Don Box came out. It wasn't funny. It wasn't fun. They were using Visual Studio, not code editors. There was no banter. They brought in code snippets to save time instead of just writing the code. It was not the same thing at all. The mood was so different. It was really clear at that time that Microsoft understood internally this was not going to go well. They're like, we're going to ship this thing. We are going to ship it.
Ship
They renamed it to Vista. I'll never forget this personally. This is just, I didn't put this in the story, but actually, no, I'm sorry. A little bit of this is going to be in the beginning of the next part of it. I was on vacation in July 2005 with my family up in Vermont. We weren't flying with our kids because we had flown with our daughter to Phoenix the year before, 2 years before, and she threw the biggest fit on a plane I have ever experienced in my entire life to this day. She was so horrible, we drugged her on the way home to get her home because we couldn't deal with this anymore. And then we spent 2 or 3 years not flying with the kids. So we went on road trips. We went up to Quebec one year, and this year we went to Vermont. And I'm sitting out by the phone. I'd gotten a request for a briefing. I said no because I'm on vacation. And PR person, whoever it was, called me and said, hey, you're going to want to take this call. It's Greg Sullivan. It's really important. And I'm like, dude, I'm sitting by a pool with my family right now. He's like, no, seriously, you got to take the call. So I went up to the room. I took the call. It was Greg. And he says, yeah, we're going to brand this thing. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. What are you going to call it? And he said, Windows Vista. And I said, are you fucking kidding me? And he's like, I'm like, you interrupted my vacation for this? I'm like, no, I'm not listening to this. I'm like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, that's a terrible name. And I didn't hang up on him. I like Rick, but I was like, no, I want nothing to do with this. And you could just tell it was going to, you could tell this was going to go south, you know?
Everything was falling apart. 2006, they had to completely scrap WinFS, the file system, because they just could never get that to work.
Well, yeah, originally they were going to, so it was going to be part of Longhorn, then it wasn't going to be part of the Vista, but it would ship later. And then, Apple, 2004 was like, hey, these guys over at Microsoft are trying to do this fast search thing. We're already doing fast search in iTunes, so we're going to put it in the Mac. And then he did this demo where they're searching for stuff on his hard drive. And it's like boom, boom, boom. Yeah. It's all kind of instantaneous. I can't do that today in Windows. You know, I mean, it's just, you could just feel the whole thing falling apart, you know, right there.
It was tough. It was tough.
Yeah, it was tough. It was bad, you know.
No, and then we got Windows 7 began, right? And Windows 7 released 2009.
That's right. So. Yeah, and you know, for me, Sinofsky was only a little bit of a question mark, because the way I had met Sinofsky was I had leaked everything about, I believe it was for something called Office 12, which in my head might have become Office 2007 out of 10. I don't remember which version. It must have been, I don't remember which version it was, but I had leaked it. And he sent me an email, and he basically said, "We're going to sue you if you don't take that article down."
Are you kidding?
And no, so I just took it down. I took it down, and I silently put it back up a few months later. But I met him after that at an Office Reviewers workshop in Brooklyn, and they never held another one in Brooklyn because it's really hard to get to Brooklyn. I actually had to walk across the bridge to get to that place. And Sinofsky was standing in a room before the event started. He was talking to two other people, and I walked up. And I said, hey, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Paul Thurrott. And I held up my hand, and he looked at me, and he did that thing where he kind of looks up and down at me. Yeah. And then he just went back to talking to the two other guys. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get along with this guy. but
hey, at least they talk and let you come to workshops and talk to you, unlike me. So
I don't know how much of this I'll tell in programming Windows, but I eventually developed a really good relationship with Sinofsky for a little while. But eventually he realized I wasn't a lackey, and that ended. But there was a period of time where people thought we had some weird, there was a weird thing.
We had a secret handshake and stuff, I think. And yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, no, I was walking through the halls of, the PDC with someone, and he came bouncing around like this little elf, and he's like, Paul, I got this thing I want to show you. And the other guy's like, oh, God, what's going on here? And then he whips out some tablet, and he's showing me this thing. And the other guy's just standing there like he's completely being ignored. And then I wish I could remember who it was. He says, well, I guess I'll just leave you guys alone. Then he left. But anyway.
Yeah.
That went so.
There's a funny post. There's a funny new post on Old New Thing, Raymond Chen's blog.
Yeah. Yep.
About, I don't know how old this is, but it said, what was the code name of Windows 7? And right. I'm like, I must know the answer to this. And it was Windows 7. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep. That's right.
I forgot that.
Yeah, yep. Windows 2000 didn't have a code name because Jim Alchin didn't like code names.
Yeah. Was
the story. But then Jim Alchin had Longhorn, Whistler, Longhorn, and Blackcomb. Yep. Yeah, tons of code names. Indigo, Avalon, kind of went on.
There were so many.
I think didn't Windows Weekly start when Vista, right about when Vista just came out?
So that's another great story. Like this probably won't make it into the article series because it's not about me. But you had contacted me in the summer of 2006, probably via email, and asked me for my phone number. And I think what I said to you was, we were about to go on our first ever home swap with the people from France and Lele Rose. And I said, look, I'm really interested. We're going to be gone for 3 weeks, during this time period. I figured we were going to talk later. And I was showing those people around the house at the time, and the phone rang. And I remember thinking, it doesn't matter who this is. I'm in the middle of something really important. But I looked at the phone and it said Leo Laporte, and I said, I'm going to have to take this.
Wow, that's the last time that ever happened.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did we wait till after you got back?
Yep. Yeah, we started it. So that was August probably that we were gone. And then I think we started in probably September.
Nice.
Yeah, it was right after that. Yeah.
That's amazing. How long ago that was?
Yep. So, well, I mean, and to put that into context, literally when we started this podcast, Windows XP was still the current version of Windows. Windows Vista shipped. They had the what do you call it? The business event, I think at NASDAQ in November of 2006. And then they launched it for consumers probably in January. Right after Steve Jobs announced the iPhone. How appropriate. Everything went great. So everything since then has been great. But yeah, so we technically started this podcast long enough ago that Windows XP was still current.
Wow.
Like crazy. Yep. Yep.
You got a lot of articles.
It's been nice
to
presiding over the disaster that has been Windows ever since.
Maybe it's our fault.
I don't. Yeah, exactly. It was fine until those two idiots started the podcast. Oh well.
I think you should turn this all into a book, and no, not with me.
It actually should. I presume you're thinking about that. I mean,
yeah.
There's more than enough material.
Right. I looked at doing it for the first half, and the thing I wanted to do was, I don't mean to say pad it out. That's not the right term. I wanted to add content to it. I wanted to go back and interview people now, and I still want to do that. And I feel like I mean I know enough people. I think it could be kind of interesting.
That would make it really good.
I think so.
Yeah.
Get
Just
their
like what
perspective.
Richard
Where are they
Campbell's
now?
doing.
Yeah.
Richard Campbell's doing history of .NET. You should do history of Windows.
And actually, so him and I have talked a little bit about doing a Windows book, but this was predicated on him actually finishing the .NET book. So I would like to. I really wanted to do that. In fact, the reason I took I took a break there in writing this series was I had hit .NET. Like I got right up to the point where they announced .NET, and I thought, well, let me back off from this. And let him do the book, and then I can pick it up. But he never, he hasn't published yet.
I think it's that's it. It's done. It's your turn.
Well, my story, the story I'm writing is not about .NET, right? It's really about Windows. So I did some .NET. This .NET factors into it. In fact, one of the things that I think is really interesting about Longhorn is they were walking away from .NET. In fact, they tried to walk away from .NET again with Windows 8, but they were not going to. They had done .NET 2. The API they were making was called WinFX, which stood for Windows Framework as opposed to the .NET Framework, right? It was composed of those things we talked about, Avalon, Indigo, and WinFS. And then eventually, like I said, developers complained, and they said, well, we'll make WinFX, we'll backport it. We'll make it available, I think they called it down level, I think was the term, on Windows XP and Windows Server 2003. And then by the time kind of Vista came around, they were like, you know what, this is the .NET Framework 3.0, and they renamed it. So from a developer perspective, like the stuff, it's a small thing actually, but one of the things I had to get through writing the new versions of those programs was the namespaces had all changed, right? Because in the beginning it was like Avalon something or, whatever the namespaces were. And today they're just system whatever or Windows whatever. It became the .NET Framework, so .NET lived to fight another day.
Yeah.
And then does your book end with the departure of Jim Olchin, or?
No, I'm going to, I'm not, I haven't finished, right? So right now I'm right in the middle of, right after the reset. And I'm going to write at least through the end of that, of course, and through Windows 7 and Windows 8. And I might end it at Windows 10 because that's 15 years. Yeah. Right? 2015. It's an even 15 years. And it could be an epilogue. I've actually kind of written the end of the story. And the end of the story is Microsoft fought the web and the web won.
Oh, interesting.
Because one of the things the big fight in the 90s was between Brad Silverberg and Jim Olchin over whether Windows should just fully embrace the web. And Jim Olchin thought that was insane and said, we're Windows, not the web. But there was, between .NET and remember the versions of Windows where everything in the file system was going to be like a one-click hyperlink like it was in the web. They went through that little period. I think that was Windows 98 or 98 SE. And Avalon, the thing we keep bringing up, which is the Windows Presentation Foundation, was a way to bring HTML-style declarative programming techniques to Windows but in a way that was proprietary to Microsoft. So it's not HTML, it's an XML variant that they made that is actually more powerful, right? And they still use today. So the XAML, they call this, started in WPF Avalon, went forward to different versions of that. They use XAML in Windows 8 store app development, Metro app development, and they use it today in everything. Actually, it's in Universal Windows apps. It's in UI apps and Windows App SDK apps. It's in Xamarin. It will be in Maui. It's it's not exactly the same. It's not identical. That's one of the little issues that developers deal with. But that technology is still being used. And it, by the way, super sophisticated. The stuff they did for Avalon in particular, which I just know the most about, is perfectly viable today. In fact, this will come up during my app pick later. As to develop modern Windows apps, it was so good, it still is excellent today. And they've never done anything like that ever since, ever.
Hey.
Ever.
Sriracha wasn't even born.
He wasn't. He just turned 7, so he was just a youth.
A youth, a little kid, a ute. Well, this has been a fun trip down memory lane.
Really,
Paul, we're going to miss you, and good luck with retirement. And
I know. I thought this was going to be a 30-minute discussion,
my friend.
Good luck with the book. Mary Jo and I will watch.
We will.
From a distance.
We'll cheer you on from the sidelines.
Your name could be first. You could just do like 10% of the work.
Nope. No. I don't like doing books. Too hard.
It's too hard.
I know, but don't
work.
think of it as a book. I'm doing a book. You're just doing a little bit of a book. You're doing.
It flows from Paul's fingertips.
We'll see how
it just.
We'll see.
He just can't stop writing. It just.
I did one book. I dreamt about it at night. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It hung over my head like
I dream
it was
about
so
this
terrible.
stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
The tortured dreams of Avalon and Longhorn.
And that's terrible when you're dreaming about like.
You don't want to be
WinFX.
doing that. No. Meanwhile, back into the present.
The terrible present.
The terrible, no good, very bad present.
Yeah, so today, in case you thought things hadn't changed, Microsoft arbitrarily, and by the way, we know for a fact, arbitrarily decided on Windows 11's hardware requirements, right? And they did it to help the PC industry.
Yeah. All the TPM 2.0 stuff, the 8th generation Intel.
Exactly. Yeah. Completely arbitrary.
Yeah. It runs fine on the earlier stuff. No problem.
But one thing that Microsoft has done in recent years that I do kind of like is they've come out with, you almost see like the legal implications. It's like when Windows 10 was new, they said publicly, we're going to let users upgrade to this new version for free for some amount of time. And if you have a retail product key for Windows 7 or 8 point whatever, you will be able to use that to do a clean install of Windows 10. And we'll activate it. No worries. Now, we're not going to do that forever. We're going to do that for some small amount of time. So you figure like a year is going to go by, maybe 2 years. And I would check every once in a while. To this day, if you have a Windows 7 or Windows 8, whatever retail product key, you can use it to activate Windows 10, probably Windows 11 too.
Yep. Now,
that's an example of Microsoft doing something, I think, right for people. Yeah. Like they publicly said what they had to do for legal reasons, but they're doing right by their customers. So when you flash forward to Windows 11, they're saying, hey, look, like we know this is going to upset enthusiasts. We're going to let you install Windows 11. We get it. Now, we may at some point stop delivering security updates, right? There's no promises, but we're going to let you do this for now. And we thought, well, if they've done this before, of course they're not going to not deliver security updates, right? But what they are going to do is be terrible in a different way. They're going to put a watermark on your desktop telling you that this computer is not supported. Like for what? Why? What is?
Just so you don't get any ideas, if you know what I mean.
What is this? What is?
But it's not going to stop you from running it. It's not going to really do anything.
And it's not a big watermark. It's just down there in the little.
Oh my God, guys! Are you kidding me? So
your boss said came through there. Oh my God!
All right, sorry.
Oh
I promise you this is water, not vodka. But this is, come on. How petty is this?
I know.
Stop.
It is petty.
You think there's
It's
a legal
petty.
reason? I mean, they're disavowing
There may
any
be a
knowledge
legal
of
reason.
your actions or something, you know.
Right.
So here's the good
they're
news.
going to let you run it. They're going to let you still run it.
I love how accepting we are of this stuff. So there are workarounds to this, right? There's some registry key or whatever. But you know what? Unfortunately, the other thing we've learned in the Windows 11 timeframe is they go out of their way to prevent stuff like that. Literally, the first update to Windows 11 was to prevent people from getting around the terrible default apps interface, which is another awful thing they did in Windows 11.
Yeah.
So it's possible that by when this goes out to the public, sometime in the next 6 months or whatever, they will block workarounds for getting rid of the watermark, you know? I guess the workaround then is to run all apps full screen so you don't have to deal with that, but
Or you put a sticky note on your screen over the watermark.
Yep.
If it really bothers you
terrible.
that much, I know. But so, it's very interesting to me. They're not blocking the people from running it, right? Like they're still letting you do it.
You know what, though? If they did, I think there would have been a lawsuit and a class action lawsuit. And one of those things that would have come out is what I just said, that those hardware restrictions are completely arbitrary and that people who run Windows 11 on non-supported hardware are in fact not endangering the community. They're not, there's nothing bad going on at all. And that Microsoft just did this artificially, I should say, to help drive PC sales.
Yeah. And
that's,
also
that's consumer harm.
Yeah, and they're letting, I keep using the word letting. They're letting people run this on their hardware because it's a security risk if they don't, right? If they don't keep updating Windows 11, it's a huge update. It's a huge problem.
I just forgot, I just remembered, we forgot a key part of the whole Windows history thing that we were just talking about. This is actually pertinent. In 2003, when they did the PDC, they brought out this guy who had actually appeared publicly a few times, but he kind of fell under the radar. Hillel Cooperman, to demonstrate the new UI. Very exciting, right? Yeah. Young guy at the time, really dynamic, kind of a Joe Belfiore type, not Bill Gates droning on and on about nothing. He left Microsoft a few years later. Yeah. So by the time PDC 2005 came around, they wanted another young, dynamic guy that wasn't Bill Gates to drone on and on. They wanted someone who would be fun to listen to. And who did they bring out? Chris Capicella.
Oh, Capicella. Funny.
Interesting.
Chris Capicella. Yeah, and he worked, he was in the information worker group, I believe, at the time, which was probably Office, basically. And he demonstrated both Windows Vista and the coming new version of Office, which I believe was Office 2007, probably. And he was on stage for 3/4 of that keynote. That keynote was Bill Gates introducing Chris Capicella. He was on stage more than Bill Gates.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well.
Yep.
Small
He did a great
world.
job, by the way. Sorry to interrupt. That just
course
flashed through my brain. Yeah, he was great.
Fun.
What do you think long-timers at
polishing a
Microsoft
turd.
think about what you're talking about? Do you think they feel like, oh, yeah, it's not as fun as it was? Or are they all
Well, first of all,
old
what's an
anyway?
old-timer at Microsoft? Who's left?
Yeah.
I mean, the guys that are still around, that were around at that time, are C-level executives in one case we know of. They're doing great, right? So they're fine. The people that were running the show at the time, they're all gone. They're like long gone. Paul Maritz, Bob Muglia, Jim Alchin, obviously, Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates. I mean, Brian Valentine. You can go down the whole list. Like they're all gone.
It's a different company now.
Yep.
It is.
Oh, it's it's a same company in name only. Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. I can't think of any. Is Dave Cutler technically still at Microsoft?
He's still there. Yeah, he's still
somehow.
technically
That's
there.
amazing, by the way.
He's a fella.
The guy's been there 30 years, closing in on, right? Oh, no, he is. He's been there for 30 years, over 30 years.
So you were saying last week that you weren't sure there'd be a furor about Windows 11 Pro requiring a Microsoft account and online.
I am delighted to be proven
There has
wrong
been a
yet
little
again.
bit of a furor.
Yeah, good.
Has there been?
I'm glad to see you people still have a heartbeat.
There was only one. there was one person who complained to me on Twitter, and after I talked to him about it, he was like, "Okay, I guess we'll just see." So I'm like, I talked him off the ledge. It's good.
But it's weird that you have to be online to install it. Doesn't that
just
seem
like
odd?
Windows 11 Home?
No, but
Same
Leo,
thing.
you think that because you have common sense. So this is.
What about people who want to do an air-gapped computer?
I know.
What about people who are living in submarines?
We asked all these things. We asked the submarine question. We asked, what about countries where they don't have where they don't have dependable internet? And they said, you know what? They're going to have to find internet just for the initials.
You're just going to have to do it.
The initial sign up. Yep, you're just going to do it.
Have to come up for air.
That's it.
Surface.
You can get online for the 5 seconds it takes to sign into your Microsoft account.
Exactly, and then you're set. Yeah.
It feels a little hostile to me.
Yeah. Well, by the way, this is honestly kind of a surprisingly long list of hostile things in Windows 11. It makes it hard. The thing is, I like it. I really do like Windows 11, but it's these things that make it a little hard to deal with, you know?
You know what? Everything that people object to in Windows 11, if you care enough, there are workarounds. Like Andy T saying, he's like, there's a workaround for this, the Windows 11 Pro sign-in thing. There's workaround if you don't, if you know enough and you're willing to take the risk and you don't have the right hardware, you can put Windows 11 on it and skip
No, but
the
my point, this is the slippery slope thing. He's right.
It is.
But Microsoft has already blocked workarounds in the short lifetime of Windows 11. What makes you think they're done blocking workarounds? You know?
Yeah.
This is, like I said, Windows 10, they did the right thing with the product key thing. Nice.
Yep.
They've already done the wrong thing with this stuff in Windows 11. And I'm worried it's going to continue.
The MSA sign-in thing, it's for devices for personal use. They keep bringing that up. So I'm pretty sure if you have a work device, you still don't have to go the MSA internet thing.
No, you have to go to an Active Directory account. What do you think?
Yeah, you do.
Like, businesses are not deploying local accounts. Like what? I mean, I don't know.
No, there are small businesses who do, right? Like very small businesses. But it says in the blog post from Microsoft, this is for personal use. It says those 3 words. Also, everyone who's asking us extra questions about this, we can't get them to answer us. We don't know any more than is in that one line. They won't answer any questions so far about
Actually,
this.
to flip that question on its head, I would also say that anyone asking us questions about this is going to be able to figure out how to work around these things, right? Like, assuming there isn't some crazy amount of blocking going on in the future. But as of today, he's right. You can get around all these things. So, there's already a workaround for the desktop
this is
watermark.
Crazy. Look at Shift.
Just so upset she went black.
F10. She's gone. Press.
I'm trying to fix
maybe she
my
did
video.
this. Press Enter in the command window. Type OOBE /bypass NRO.
Oh, there's an easier way than that, actually.
I hope so.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, and by the way, remember the thing I had said earlier, unless they remove local account support from Windows entirely.
They can change it, you
can always sign in with a Microsoft account.
Dummy account.
Create an account and then get the heck out of there. So.
Which you would think Microsoft wouldn't want all those dummy accounts cluttering up their databases and all that. I mean, I just don't understand it.
I mean,
guys, like we said at the start of the show, new world. It's a new world.
Yeah. It's a brave new world. Our show today brought to you by IT Pro TV. That's what IT Pro TV does. They get you ready for this brave new world. As an individual, they have great IT training, but also if you've got a team, an IT team, they always have to get more training, recertify, add new skills. That's key to success in your business. With IT Pro TV, you're going to give them something they enjoy, they want to do. It's not a burden. More than 80% of users who start a video actually finish it on IT Pro TV. They love it that much. That's because IT Pro TV hires engaging, informative instructors. They call them edutainers that make it interesting, that make it fun, that you're enjoying this education. It's the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down. Give your team the tools they need to make your business thrive. They're going to be invested in learning. They're going to love it, and you're going to get a much more proficient IT team. As we said, the tech industry is evolving. It's changing. Your team has to be trained. They have to be kept fresh, recertified. When a new software release comes out, or a new system, or a cyber threat that's brand new, a zero-day faces your business, you'll be happy to know that your team is getting IT training from the best, IT Pro TV. Why is IT Pro TV right for your business? Well, you can get all your training and certifications done all in one place. They've got every vendor, every skill you need for your IT team training. I mean, it's the complete one-stop shop. Microsoft IT training, Cisco training, Linux training, Apple training, security, cloud, so much more. In fact, 5,800 hours in their library, and it's all up to date. It's all up to date. And with the business plan, they've got some great features for you as you manage your team. You can track results, manage seats, assign and unassigned team members to various courses, access monthly usage reports. You'll get all the metrics you need, logins, viewing time, tracks completed, and more. You can easily manage your teams. You can manage subsets of users or teams, saying, this group, you need to do this group, you need to do that. You can monitor their progress. You'll get reporting on how they use the platform. And by the way, those assignments don't have to be full courses. They could just be individual episodes. You need to learn more about key signing. Here's an episode for you. There's a really nice advanced reporting tool which will give you all sorts of insight into what your team's doing with IT Pro TV, their viewing patterns, their progress, the very visual reports. It's a great way to justify the spend to your higher-ups and to keep in touch with what your team's learning. And, of course, IT Pro TV has individual plans, too. I don't want to imply they don't, but sometimes I think we don't mention the team learning as much as we ought to. It's really, really good. Give your team the IT development platform they need to level up their skills while enjoying the journey. For teams of 2 to 1,000, actually, volume discounts start at 5 seats, but I'm going to start you with a discount right off the bat. When you go to itpro.tv/windows, tell your IT Pro account executive, say, WW30, that's the magic password, for 30% off or more on a business plan. WW30 at itpro.tv/windows. Apologize for my voice. I think it's allergies because it rained and everything's blossoming.
Puberty is tough on everybody.
And it's also, I'm 16
like to go
now.
to the dance with me?
Mrs. Foley.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yep. All right. Didn't mean to interrupt, but, duty calls, as they say. Sure. Back to the trip down memory lane. Actually, this is the future, modern. Intel has some new mobile chipsets.
So remember when the Surface Laptop 5 specs leaked a few years ago, we were like, what? These Intel model numbers look really weird. What is this? And Intel usually announces new generation desktop chips in the latter half of the year, and then CES comes around and they announce like the U series mobile chips, for laptops and so forth. So they did do that, but they didn't really provide any details about what they were. This is a 12th gen U series, whatever. A bunch of laptops were announced. No one said anything about the processors, just that they were 12th gen. HP sent me a laptop just to kind of check out the design. Of course, I tried to figure out what the processor was, and then they were like, "Okay, you can send it back now. You're getting a little too close to this." And
did they actually know that you had been looking?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, because I wrote about it.
Oh.
So now we kind of know what they're doing, and it's actually really interesting. So Intel had in the past experimented with what I'm going to call like a hybrid core architecture for their core, capital C core chipsets. But they were for kind of niche chipsets. They weren't for the mainstream chips. So now they're doing this ARM-style hybrid core architecture on their mainstream chips. And the way they're breaking it down is a little different than the past. They're going to do, performance cores and efficiency cores, multiple efficiency cores on even the lower-end products. U-Series is going to be, is it 9 or 7? Let me just look at my notes. Sorry. I think I would memorize this small detail. Yeah, 9 and 15 watt designs. There's a new P series that's going to sit between U and H that will be 28 watts. And then H series processors will be 56 watts. These things are called out in their model numbers. So like the 1280P is a P series with a 28 watt architecture. The P series chips will have a total of 14 cores up to 14 cores, I should say. The U series chips will have 2 performance cores, and then depending on the model, 6 to 10 efficiency cores. These things are up to 70% better performance than last year's highest-end chips from AMD or Intel, and they consume half the energy. The other thing is, this is kind of an interesting claim. Intel is saying that they're going to beat the M1 and the M1 Pro, but not the M1 Max, interestingly, in some benchmarks. Benchmarks are obviously kind of arbitrary, but this is clearly what they're shooting for. It's going to support all the Iris Xe graphics, Wi-Fi 6E, Thunderbolt 4, PCIe 4, et cetera, as you would expect. But, the big news here is they're doing this thing we always kind of said they would do, which is Intel has seen the threat from ARM. They've done the engineering work to modify their mainstream processors. And this year, for the first time, that type of processor is coming to PCs. Mainstream PCs, I should say.
So what did the HP have that you were looking at?
That's a good question, actually. Now that I know.
I'm just curious if you could notice the difference in performance.
What I noticed was the performance was terrible, but that was the point, because I got it right before I went to Mexico, and I was really happy because it was like a 3x2 display. I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then I was like using it. I'm like, this thing doesn't work very well. So I started to figure out what was going on, and they were obfuscating what the processor was. So there was some information about it I could figure out and some I couldn't. And I wrote about that, and they were like, okay, that's enough of that. Just wanted you to look at the design. We'll come back in March or whenever these things are coming out. So it was almost certainly a P series chipset, I would imagine, just based on, I think, the 28 watt thing. So. But yeah, this is actually really exciting. I mean, and I think we must have talked about Intel last week, right? How some people in the tech industry, those who maybe know a little bit too much, are like, oh, they're dead. They screwed up. They're mismanagement. Blah blah blah. And it's like I don't know. I think they're gonna get this one right. So this is the first major step in that direction. Anyway.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Just announced today.
Good. Actually, I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, me too.
Yeah,
me too.
Are those processors out now? I mean, those laptops? Should I start looking?
No,
at
so they're going to become now. They'll be coming out anytime. Okay. So February, March is the launch time frame. So that's
and how will they be designated? Will it be 12th generation or?
Yeah, the 12th gen. They're still using the U series config, naming, branding, or whatever on like ultra portables, so ultrabooks and like really thin and light machines. But now the P series, which is for performance, and then H series, which is for high performance, and the wattage goes up, as you go up between those.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's do some Xbox news so that Mary Jo can do whatever she does while we do that.
It was looking a little light, but then some stuff happened today. So with Microsoft getting rid of Mixer and all that stuff, it is perhaps predictable and inevitable that they have now integrated or are integrating Twitch into the UI. So if you want to use Twitch, that will be integrated into the Xbox dashboard, and you'll be able to capture, share, live stream, etc., just as one would. So it's nice to see Amazon and Microsoft getting along. The other thing the other big story here is we know that Microsoft wants to buy Activision Blizzard. We know all the kind of backstory between the terribleness of Activision Blizzard and so forth. But they sent a letter to their shareholders and had to file this publicly, asking them to approve this sale. And in doing so, they detailed exactly what happened. And when I say exactly, I mean every phone call, every meeting, every virtual meeting, and I don't just mean between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. I mean between the CEO of Activision and the board and the various stakeholders, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on and on. But the important thing for Microsoft people here is, Phil Spencer, who, by the way, I think is one day going to have a statue of himself somewhere in some gaming hall of fame, had publicly kind of come out around the time that the Activision Blizzard terribleness started happening last November and said, this is bad. We're going to do something about this. We're deeply, troubled by these allegations. And I kind of called him out on Twitter. I was like, look, anyone can say words. What are you going to do about it? Like, this is just, they're not going to do anything about it. And they did something about it. They offered them many, many billions of dollars, and they're going to buy them and they're going to fix them. So,
there you go.
Literally, they made me look like a jerk that I am. So the interesting stuff about this is how quickly it happened, and how it all came together. There were 5 other entities interested in merging or buying with Activision, one of which was an individual. They're not named. All of those deals eventually fell apart. Microsoft originally wanted to offer them, I think it was $93 a share. Activision Blizzard came back and said, what do you think about $100 a share, $105 a share? And they were like, yeah, we don't think much of that. It was basically like haggling for a used car. And yeah, really, it's fascinating watching it go back. And it's the same. It's, you know, I think my wife could have gotten him up a little higher. But anyway, they eventually went to, I think it was 90, was it 93 or 95? Whatever they agreed at was some compromise somewhere in the middle there. And many, many meetings, lots of due diligence, blah, 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 whatever. And they accepted it. So this filing is available publicly if you want to go read it for yourself. It's very long. A little monotonous unless you're really interested in how people meet and how often they meet and so forth. But it goes into great detail. I'm actually surprised how detailed it is.
Are they required to do that? Why tell that story?
I don't know. It's an amazing amount of disclosure, especially given the thing we were just talking about, which is how companies these days really don't seem to disclose a lot. But I think both sides probably understand the antitrust ramifications here. And both sides want it to go through. So I think that might have something to do with it.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. And in more personal news, the latest Call of Duty game apparently has not done so well. And by not done so well, by the way, it still made like $1 billion, right? Like it's like we're not talking about, it wasn't a disaster. It wasn't, you know, like Geesley or something. But it didn't do as well as expected. It certainly hasn't done as well as the last couple of games. And they're going to finally do what I have basically been begging them to do for years, which is stop releasing new Call of Duty games every year. So this year they are going to release the next Modern Warfare game, which makes sense. This is eagerly anticipated. The last one was a huge blockbuster, but they're going to take next year off, and then we'll see what happens. Some of the theories are they want more time to make the next game good because Vanguard didn't come out very well. They might just finish off the new trilogy. Maybe the next one will be another Modern Warfare game because those are really popular. Why not? But what I think they really should do is the thing I've been begging them to do for years is make something called Call of Duty Online and have it just be this subscription service where they add maps and loadouts and score streaks and whatever else. And you can mix and match and make playlists and say, like, I want to play the World War II version of the game and I want it to have Modern Warfare weapons and I want these to be the maps and these are the score streaks we're going to have. And I think the community would just embrace that, and it would cost them less.
It would make more money, yeah, because it's a subscription.
And it's what people want, you know, not another stupid storyline that nobody cares about, you know.
I think you need to get a new game.
Well,
it's time.
I like Windows. I've been doing it for a while.
Got a big investment. He's Prestige 94, kids.
That's right. Yeah. I've actually maxed out on I can't Prestige anymore.
It's as prestige as you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought of you. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
You're so identified with Call of Duty in my mind. I thought, oh, poor Paul. Oh,
I'm not called Call of Duty for nothing.
Call of Duty. All right, we're going to take a little time out. Then it's time for the back of the book. We're gonna let Srirachi. Did he unplug your camera? Is that why your bandwidth went down?
No. He was laying on the laptop and it got hot.
Oh, it got hot. He's a little kitty blanket.
Yeah, it's cute. The warmth.
How cute is that? Back of the book.
It's cute till it burns out your motherboard, and then it's not so cute.
Wow, cat throttling.
Yeah.
More than one way.
Exactly.
Yep. Back of the book time. Paul Thurrott's got a tip of the week.
Yeah. So I've been kind of embarrassed to even bring this up. But given the last couple of tips we did, I thought this might be pertinent because this is something I actually deal with every day. If you use any Microsoft product to write words, you will know that there are different color squigglies that appear under those words.
Funnily, you got a little red squiggly under squiggly. Apparently doesn't know the word squigglies.
That's actually, this is a great example. In fact, you might, bring that up because we can show what happens.
Okay.
So here's one of the weird things.
Wait a minute. Let me get squigglies up on the screen. Oh, well, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, it's doing it. And even on the Mac, it does it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm interested to see how it works on the Mac. So to date, to fix this,
yeah,
what I would do is right-click it, right?
Yeah.
So if you right-click that thing, You get the suggestions. Squiggle fest, squiggliest. So, okay, fine.
Or you can add it to the dictionary, which is what I always do.
Or you can add, that's right. But the point here is you have to right-click. Honestly, I got to tell you, I don't like to put my hand on the mouse. Right-clicking is a little more difficult. I know I'm that's a little weird, but
it takes your hands off the
one
keyboard, slows you down.
Yeah. So in the process of experimenting with Word Online or Word for the web, I noticed you don't have to right-click. You can just click, normal click, and that's super. So see if it works there. I don't know if it will or not.
So left click.
If you just click it.
Nothing, right?
Right. So that's what happens to me I'm using OneNote for Windows 10. I happen to like this better than the full OneNote client. I have to right click, and actually then there's like a proofing menu that comes off the side, and you select it that way.
Right.
So I typically use Microsoft Word to write, obviously, the native desktop application. And I swear to God, I just found this out. This is actually kind of embarrassing. So sometime in the past 2 to 3 months, one day, typing away in Word, got some kind of squiggly word. I clicked on it, and the corrections menu came up. You don't have to right-click. So I've been doing that wrong possibly for years. I have no idea when that started. The reason I bring this up is if you spend a lot of time writing like I do, you might want to just take a look at this, because depending on what you're using, sometimes you have to click and sometimes you have to right-click, and it's way easier just to click. Way easier.
They should give us a control up arrow or something would be nice.
They should give us something that works the same everywhere, is my opinion.
Well, that would also be nice. Yes. Yeah. Something consistent. Yep. But a keystroke combo would be good.
Yeah. Yes. And actually, so actually Mary Jo just had an interaction on Twitter with someone who was talking about this autocorrection feature in Windows, right? The broader autocorrection feature. And he was saying there is an up arrow kind of keystroke, right? Is that
that would be the intuitive thing. Command up arrow, control up arrow.
Yeah. He was talking about, instead of the tab key, use the up arrow key followed by the right and left arrow keys.
That makes sense. Yeah. Keep your hands on the keyboard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, I can't do it. In this, I don't know. If I hit tab in the middle of squigglies, it's going to turn into S-tab squigglies or quigglies. I don't know.
You're right. I just did it. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, Leo, you stop making tails. What are you doing? Well, how do you automatically go to table? How does that even happen? What's the table?
It was me. I did it. Oh, now we know how the table started. I hit the tab button by accident. Now it's Squig.
Oh, is that what it is? It's tab. Oh,
yeah.
Squig glies. Yeah.
I just hit tab.
Oh, look at that.
Squig glies.
Yep. That's funny.
Oh, I've just added another.
Oh, jeez. What's happening?
Now he's adding. Okay. The notes are all going to hell.
LL is going to go read only next week, folks.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, man.
That was close.
Oh, man.
Those squigglies will get you every time.
Right.
How about an app pick?
Yeah. So
you can't pick your app again. You already did that.
No, but I've improved it since then.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
This year I'm trying to do like one programming project every month. So for February, I'm actually doing the updates to this app. And the updates I've done so far take two forms. There's some of the pull requests, right, that people have made, I've accepted, right? I think I talked about that before. So I did that. So these people have forked, if you will, .NET Pad, and have added features of their own. And they basically come back to me and say, hey, maybe you could add these back. And so I've added a couple of those. I've also fixed 3 bugs of my own. One of the many, WordPad does, I'm sorry, Notepad does this. If you size the window some way and close it and come back, it remembers the size and position. But one of the things it didn't do was remember that it was maximized. So it would bring it back as a floating window that occupied the entire space, which is not ideal in any way, shape, or form. So that's fixed. There's a kind of a themes bug where now it will actually select the theme that is selected, and whatever. That's kind of obvious. And I updated I didn't completely fix the status bar to be identical to Notepad, but I did make it better. So that was a step in the right direction. You got to remember, this is the oldest version of this app, right? I don't want to spend too much time on it. But one of the things I did want to look at was whether I could duplicate the new UI of the new Notepad in WinForms. And you sort of can. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. I don't want to get into too many details, but you can. I mean, one of the things you can do is, change the fonts, change the font sizing, the spacing. I did all that work. I haven't posted this to the public GitHub thing, but it's and I may still not. I'm not sure if I would want to do it. You have a little settings gear over on the side, right? Instead of a help menu, I did that. It's not perfect. I also spent a lot of time trying to basically fake dark mode because it's a desktop application, and you can actually access Windows APIs to figure out if dark mode's selected, and you can change the colors. Like I can do that, but ultimately what I kind of decided was this is too old of an app or too old technology to bother with that stuff. It's just a lot of extra work, Like if you made a modern Windows app and you wanted to support dark mode, you don't have to do anything. It just works. Like the dark mode switches, your app switches. Like it's just there. You get it for free basically. It's easy. In this app, you have to micromanage every single UI element in the app, and I mean like every menu item, every little the handle on the status bar. It's all these little things, and it's just not worth it. So the next thing I looked at was whether to do like a WinUI, XAML Island, something. And the thing I discovered is this. That app UI you see in Notepad is absolutely WinUI. And the reason I know that is when I create a new WinUI app, it looks like identical to Notepad. It's the spacing, the fonts, everything is exactly the same. It is very clearly how they did it. I'm not going to do that to this version of it. So I think next month or maybe the month after that, I'm going to do the WPF. We talked about Avalon today, the Avalon version of the app, if you will, the Windows Presentation Foundation version. That to me is the best version of the app. And maybe as part of that version, I'm going to see if it makes sense to fully modernize the UI. We'll see. I think what I'm going to do is just show people what changes you have to make it look sort of like the new version. But I don't think I want to put that in the GitHub repository because I don't think it's what everyone wants. In fact, you might make the argument that now that Notepad has been updated to be modern, there's kind of a call for an app that was like the original, so it's a little bit more like the original. So sometime in the next 7 days, I'm going to finish that and that will be done. So that's why I mentioned it this week. It's I think I'm done with this version of it.
It's a nostalgic netpad.
It is. It's a nostalgic, like a Notepad. Right. Maybe I should have made the Windows 2000 version of Notepad.
Why don't you call it nostalgic pad?
Okay.
Good old days,
Mary Jo, I'll tell you what. If you work with me on the book, I'll call it whatever you want to call it.
Way back when.
Foley pad.
Foley pad.
Foley pad.
Ooh, I like Foley pad. You can have footsteps in it.
It's always in non-distraction mode.
Like folio.
Folio pad. Foley pad.
Like Foley-O.
Like Folly. Oh, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Foley's Folly.
Foley's Folly.
Yeah.
Enterprise Pick of the Week. Mary Jo Foley.
Yes. As we talked about last week, Microsoft is renaming everything Defender these days. They have a product named Defender for Cloud that used to be called Azure Defender, but now it's called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. In the fall of last year, they made it so that you could use Microsoft Defender for Cloud to actually support AWS as well as Azure, which was kind of weird. But today, they also added support for Google Cloud. So now you can use this Microsoft security service to secure your Google Cloud and your AWS Cloud. And by secure, I mean you can have a common set of secure scorecards for all your clouds. You can look and see the security status of all the different clients in your cloud. You can have threat protection for workloads now also in Google Cloud. So they're making it, the way they're pitching this is, we're supporting you security-wise with our security service, no matter what cloud you happen to be running. Kind of interesting. I don't know how many people will take advantage of that in AWS and GCP, but it's an interesting idea.
For so all the Defender cloud and you.
For cloud. Nice. Defender for cloud. Yeah.
Nice. Lovely. And
yes,
your codename pick of the week.
So my codename is Singularity, but there is not just one Singularity.
Jeez.
Just to make this very confusing. Yes. In the old days, there was a product called Microsoft Singularity that was a microkernel OS. That was something Microsoft Research was working on. It's basically what influenced Midori, which was an operating system project not based on Windows that Microsoft came up with. Barrelfish, Helios, Drawbridge. There were all these old operating system related projects based on Singularity. Now, since that Singularity is basically discontinued, they're reusing the code name. Being good corporate citizens, they like reuse and recycling. And they're taking the codename Singularity and they're using it to refer to this new AI supercomputer that they're building in Azure. The idea is if you want to use AI, but you don't have all the necessary data center, all the necessary data sets, the resources, the really high capacity VMs, you're going to be able to use Microsoft's Singularity service. I don't know if it'll ultimately be called Singularity. Probably not. It'll probably get a much more boring name than that. But it'll be a service in Azure that you can use to run AI workloads in Microsoft's cloud. So they've been kind of dabbling with this idea for a while. They had this idea where you could use Microsoft's cloud to and access their field programmable gate arrays in Azure. But I think they're taking it a step further now, and they're actually architecting the compute, the networking, the storage, so that it's optimized for AI, and people will get to use that in Microsoft's cloud and not have to have it in their own cloud. So where is this at? I don't know. Microsoft doesn't really want to talk about it, even though they published a research paper on it this week. That's kind of weird. Like, hey, guys, the research paper's out there. But, yeah, they won't talk about when it's coming to Azure, what its relationship is to other projects they've worked on, and nothing, basically. They just said, go read the security paper. Go read the research paper, which is very much a research paper, right? It doesn't really have product details or commercialization details. But anyway, now we know about Singularity, and we know that they're hiring for the team, and it's coming soon, probably. One of the people working on it is Mark Russinovich.
Oh, wow.
I can't wait for the Singularity.
The Singularity is here.
I'm ready.
Yes.
Take me away.
Yes, right?
All right, let's do some beer. What do you say?
Yes, I like it. People who may or may not be into craft beer have probably heard of Magic Hat Number 9. That's a beer you see in a lot of old bars around the U.S. It's a pale ale. It's not really a craft beer, probably technically, but it's also not a good beer. It's when you taste it, you're like, it's fine. It's just very generic, nothing special. So Magic Hat ended up partnering with a beer brewery in Vermont called Hermit Thrush. Hermit Thrush is like a premier craft brewery. They're really known for their sours. And so Hermit Thrush took Magic Hat Number 9, the old recipe. They put it in a foeder barrel. They soured it using their yeast. And the beer that comes out, called Sour Number 9, is amazing. It's fantastic. It's like when you drink this, you're like, wait, that's Magic Hat? It really tastes different. If you like sours and you see this beer, you should give it a try. I got to try it at a beer tasting over the weekend, and I'm like, wow, that doesn't even taste anything like the old Magic Hat, and it tastes really modern. It's kind of like how Microsoft's been modernizing the OS. Basically, Magic Hat took some Hermit Thrush magic and mixed it together, and now they've got Sour Number 9.
I love sours. It's good
You
for
would
the
love
summertime.
this beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a foeder? What's a foeder barrel?
A foeder is some kind of a wooden barrel.
Isn't that the name of the river in Colorado? Foeder? Foudre?
Foudre. I think it also means lightning in French, I believe. Foudre.
Foudre.
Sounds like it's like an Intel code name.
Yeah, it sounds like an Intel code name.
Yeah, it does.
Mount Foudre. Good beer. Sounds good. Let's go have some. We are going to adjourn this episode of Windows Weekly, the nostalgia
Next week we'll talk about Windows 8.
That was all downhill from there.
Yeah, it sure was.
Paul Thurrott puts his books at lanepub.com. Right now it's the Field Guide to Windows 10, but sounds like there's more coming, including a Field Guide to Windows 11 and maybe a history of Microsoft programming or something. I don't know. Featuring Mary Jo
whatever
Foley.
that is.
Yeah, it'll be good.
No.
Guest author.
He's also at thurrott.com, THURRO double good, and joins us every week, as does Mary Jo Foley from ZDNet, allaboutmicrosoft.com. We do the show on Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. You can join us live if you want. Watch it at live.twit.tv. People who watch live often like to chat live at irc.twit.tv or in our Club Twit Discord. In fact, Club Twit's a great way to participate in all of our shows. We have some special feeds, special shows like the Untitled Linux Show, Stacey Higginbotham's Book Club. We've got a new show called This Week in Space we're developing in the club thanks to club members, $7 a month. You also get ad-free versions of all the shows because we don't have to put ads on those shows. You're paying us $7 a month. It's not much, less than a couple of foodras or something. Twit.tv/clubtwit if you'd like to know more. After the fact, we have free versions of the show available at our website, twit.tv/WW. You can always watch on YouTube. All the videos are up there. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to Windows Weekly. And, of course, the best thing to do is find your favorite podcast player, Overcaster, Shoutcaster, Stitcher, Slacker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and subscribe. In fact, if your podcast client allows for reviews, leave us a 5-star review because we got to beat those .NET guys. Just, man, bugs me. Just to subscribe and you'll get it the minute it's available of a Wednesday afternoon. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mary Jo. Have a great week. Cheer up. The next big version of Windows is just around the corner. That's it for
Windows 12. I can't
Windows
wait.
12. The Taylor Swift version. That's it for Windows Weekly. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Did you spend a lot of money on your brand new smartphone and then you look at the pictures on Facebook and Instagram and you're like, what in the world happened to that photo? Yes, you have. I know. It happens to all of us. Well, you need to check out my show, Hands On Photography, where I'm going to walk you through simple tips and tricks that are going to help make you get the most out of your smartphone camera or your DSLR or mirrorless, whatever you have. And those shots are going to look so much better. I promise you. So make sure you're tuning in to twit.tv/hop for Hands On Photography to find out more.